So let's say you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a duck? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts number that is some real number. I don't know. I don't remember. It's a number. I am here with Dr. Kip Davis and Vishanti. How are y'all?
Good, but that was very strange because I just got like an overseas call.
It was me.
On my no, it wasn't because I know where you live.
It's
and
wrong,
it's
wrong
not
country?
overseas. Wrong country, yes. Wrong time zone, because I know that too. So it just, that's weird. It's weird when I never get overseas calls.
I don't either. Vish, how are you doing?
A bit groggy, but I have my coffee and donuts, so hooray!
Nice. Well, I have no donuts,
Yay.
but I have a tumbler that's about 1/3 full of gin. Because
Okay.
it has been a long and stupid week involving I in one day had to go to Office Depot 3 times
Ugh.
because I needed to print out like 45 or something pages worth of paperwork. And twice, so one time, they just didn't print all of it out, so I had to go back and have them print the rest of it. Then another time, they printed a PDF file, but they blew it up so that the margins were off the page, and I needed the stuff that was off the page. That was like the vital stuff. I'm like, this is the important part, is the part that you didn't have on the page. And so I had to go back, and then I had to go to CVS, and that got complicated for stupid reasons. And I had to go to FedEx, and then I had to drive back because I forgot something that I needed to ship with FedEx. I had to go to FedEx twice, and basically I spent about 10 solid hours just making sure that all my ducks were in a row. And it was crazy, and my brain is fried, so I have gin.
So, just to give you some perspective, imagine a life like that. Not where the businesses are complicating things, like just kind of pretend that they did what they were supposed to do, but forgetting things you need to ship, or oh shit, I left this thing in the imagine that, but as life. And that's 1% of what having ADHD feels like.
Yeah. So
like me having to develop an entire freaking mantra before I step out of the house. Phone, wallet, keys. Did I bring the trash? Did I need to do this thing? Do I have the inventory in my on my person that I meant to do for the things? And it's like exhausting having to do that crap.
I have a specific thing for keys and cars, which is that I will not close the trunk of a car or the boot if you're from that part of the world, unless the keys to that car are in my hand physically right now while I'm closing it. Because one time I closed the trunk of my car while my keys were in there, and I was on base while I was in the Navy, so I had to get an approved locksmith who was allowed on the base to come in and open my trunk for me, and it was such a hassle, and it took hours and hours and hours. So now, if I do not have the keys in my hand, I do not close it. Period.
Yeah, this is one of the many reasons that I have like a little I don't know if it's technically a lanyard, but it's for my keys, and I wear it around my neck because if you keep leaving your keys in enough places, well, hanging it around your neck is a great way to not do that anymore.
Oh, hey. Drink for Mothra real
quick. I've never had a car with a boot.
Really?
Or a trunk.
Where do you put
Honestly,
things?
I was thinking about that just now, and I have never owned a vehicle with a trunk or a boot. When I was living in Norway, and my wife and my kids came home to Canada a year ahead of me, and she took a job, she bought a car with a trunk, and One of my kids locked himself in it, and he thought he was going to die. So
Oh,
No.
that was the last time.
jeez.
And I've never owned a car with a trunk, and she decided after that, yeah, you know what, this trunk thing, it's just not. It's not for us. It's really not.
In my car,
Ugh.
you can push the back seats, like the back of the back seats, forward if you're in the trunk, and you could escape that way.
Yes.
So
Yes, I think that was the case with that particular vehicle as well. But he was 9 and like
Yeah.
panicking.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
yeah.
Well, we have a few super chats, and then we're gonna get into this, and also we have some. We got, I believe, 10 gift to membership, so we'll have to get to that too. So let's go through those. First of all, for £50. Oh my goodness, there's Mothra again. Thank you, Mothra. Benthic Tunicate, the Mythicipist, says, alas, I will once again miss the live stream. Please accept this humble limerick. There once was a man from Limerick with a huge canvas bag that was brown and thick. He showed it to me and we laughed with great glee. Just like AIG, 'twas a bag of dicks. And we'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna clap.
Very nice.
Honestly.
Yeah. Lieutenant Math Navigator, who has been a member for 60 months and is at the amniote level, says, we're here to hear more wisdom from a man who only uses his head to store his teeth. Yeah, that does kind of describe Amon. Actually, I suspect he has at least one other use for his head, which is to intake certain chemicals. Metageeky Platypus Librarian says, my brain is Swiss cheese. I feel the need to say mongoose. AIG is a satchel of unsanitary sausages not for eating. I am the Lizard Queen with a Mothra. Thank you very much. We'll take a drink for that, Metageeky. By the way, Metageeky is in my D&D game that Chesh is running. I think we have 2 more sessions over on Top Hats Off. So if you want to see her doing some D&D stuff as the Fey-touched Goblin Barbarian Thunk, go head over to Top Hats Off and watch that. Then Joshua Gee sends...
Dapper,
Yes?
since you were talking about your Mothra notification and people tend to leave kaiju in your super chats, I was like, man, I just thought about Godzilla and the second season of Monarch. And then I was like, oh yeah, Rodan.
Yeah, well, spoilers, first of all.
Yeah, my boy.
No, I'm only halfway through that.
Yeah, you just spoiled it.
But man, it's okay. I'm gonna forget.
Oh, good.
Inside of the next couple of hours, because that's just how things go for me these days.
That seems fair.
No worries.
I think
fine.
I'm in my like heal era, because my whole thing with Bullseye and Rodan, like, and Pyro, apparently I'm just in my anti-villain heal whatever phase. Just gonna enjoy it.
All right.
Question it.
So Naramda puts... So first of all, Joshua Geese gives 10 gifted memberships, and I'm going to drink for that after I read the next couple super chats, because that, I think, will go more smoothly. Naramda puts for $5 says, Kip will be happy to hear that whatever the number episode is, it is real and not complex. That's true. Kip does not do well with complex numbers. I
can own that.
Yeah. For one thing, vector math, that's not Kip's thing.
No, but it doesn't matter.
One thing that's nice about vector math, though, is that the complexity of vector math scales linearly with the number of dimensions that you're calculating the vector with, not like exponentially or anything. So like 4-dimensional math for vector math is actually only a tiny bit harder than 3-dimensional vector math, and so it's not that bad. That's why computers are so damn good at it. My Unfinished Journey for $2 says, hail Daps and gang, and hail keeping ducks in a row with a fist emoji. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to take 10 drinks. Well, I'm going to have Kip tell you about his experience talking to the man who is the subject of this video that we're actually not going to do much with, but I still want Kip to tell you about Amon Hillman and his experience talking to him, because I know he has done it.
I have done it, and I mean, I was this was a few years ago. I think it was a Saturday, and I was spending the day with my family. We went to a movie, and just before going to the movie, I was contacted by Gnostic Informant, who was planning a celebration stream for hitting 100,000 subs, and he's like, I want to do this thing where I'd like to have an open discussion between you and this other scholar who I really like, who thinks that the Septuagint was, well, that the Greek, Hebrew, Greek is fake, Septuagint's the original. And he's like, "Do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, yeah. I mean, that sounds interesting." I'm like,
Interesting
stupid,
is a word,
but and I was like, "I've got all this stuff that I got to do today." So and he was selling this as just a very casual thing. And when you get onto a stream with someone before you go live, and if it's somebody that you've not met before, because I'm not an asshole, I usually introduce myself. "Hi, how are you? It's nice to meet you. I've heard things about you." This sort of thing, right? Like normal
right?
human dialogue. That didn't happen. Amon just kind of like nodded aggressively at me when I tried to do that, so that was weird. And then during the stream itself, and I was on for about an hour. I was trying to be light-hearted about this. I was being very
Drink from Mothra.
excessively self-deprecating in this exchange too, just because Neil had sold me on how non-adversarial this was going to be, and at one point he just started basically calling me an idiot.
I remember that.
Insisting that I didn't know what I was talking about, and I ended up quitting. I developed a reputation as a result of this for rage quitting, because for me the final straw was him, and so that's the other thing that was happening too. Neil's got uncontrollable ADHD, like just off the charts kind of ADHD that is really intrusive, and that he doesn't have a good handle on managing. So he would interject way more often than he should have. And I was getting frustrated by that. So there were several times when I just told him to shut up because I needed to say things.
Yeah.
And that was happening, but then the final straw for me was when I interjected and said something in response to a claim Amon was making. He said, "I don't care what you have to say. When you tell me that, all I hear is hoo-ha, hoo-ha."
Yeah.
And at that point, I recognized, he's just not listening at all.
Yeah, at that
he's
point,
not
why are you
interested
there, right?
in an actual. So, and that's what I did. I'm like, well, honestly, if this is what's happening, I don't have to be here. So
Yeah.
I left.
So
there you go.
My Unfinished Sock for $2 says, "Don't lock your keys in your trunk. Like and share." I agree. And then there's a winky tongue out emoji. And then the Screen Geek, who's been a member for 37 months and is at the Emnio level, says, "I spent 300 books at a card show today, so I guess I can help out with the GoFundMe as well." How's everybody doing? Did y'all hit like already? Yes, do hit like. And yes, we do have the fundraiser. So I am going to let you know, the fundraiser right now has covered my current expenses for computer repair and getting a laptop to stream from. Like right now is what I'm streaming from, which means if you want to support me with a one-time donation that is just because you want to, is a great way to do it, because it takes less even than Patreon does. So it is still up, and I'm still letting people know about it today, but I mostly because I said I would promote it today, but I'm probably not going to continue to promote it unless some big new bill happens all of a sudden somehow. So yeah, please feel free to do that if you want to. That is one update there. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to just play a little bit of this appearance of Amon Hillman on the Danny Jones podcast. Only a very little bit, because I don't actually have that much to say about it. And I just wanted to do it mostly because this is actually my first encounter with Amon Hillman, is I was sent this full episode of this podcast by my brother. And that was how I became aware that this man existed. Or exists.
Did you watch the entire podcast all the way through?
I believe I watched like want to say like a half hour or something of it. And
Okay.
it didn't take much. It did not even take that long for me to realize that this man is absolutely insane and that he has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to most of these things.
So importantly, I'll just say this: the podcast happened after. So I already knew who he was, and I had this exchange with him already beforehand, right? But I watched it through in its entirety all the way through, and I was utterly gobsmacked at how stupid the entire thing was. It's something.
I imagine you were even more taken aback by how stupid it was because you know more about the topic than I do, and even I was like, "Wow, this might be the stupidest thing I've ever heard in relation to this topic." Yes. Sharon Lane, K2B, who's been a member for 4 months at the Tetrapod level, sends a Godzilla, a Mothra, and an AIG's a bag of dicks membership chat. That's what I'm looking for. We'll take a drink for that. Thank you.
Hey, are we ever gonna get a Rodan emoji?
I don't know, because we would need to have enough people for me to add another emoji, and the next emoji is already supposed to be a Kip emoji. So it might take a while for a Rodan. Yeah. I mean, if you want Rodan, just everyone get together and send as many gift memberships as possible, and then we can probably get 2 emojis. It'll take like 200 or 300 memberships, but like physically that's not impossible. Tree Clam Tat for $2 says Amon Hillman is a bag of Danny Jones.
Yikes. Danny's Jones.
Oh yeah, Danny's Jones. Yeah. Yeah, that's I'll take a drink for that. That's fine. I'll take that works. 42 CRMO4 not a robot, 5X, who's been a member for 3 months and is at the Tetrapod level, says, I love Murphy the Dino Rider. And then there's Murphy and a Godzilla. Good old Murphy. I'll take a drink. Murphy is technically the Chesh emoji, in case anyone is wondering. Yeah. So, all right. Here we go. We're going to get a little bit of this, but we're not really going to respond to a whole lot.
That you're reading and that you're translating, are these the original sources of religion?
So the obvious answer here is no, because there is no one text that is the origin of religion. That's kind of silly. Now, to be fair, I mean, Danny Jones might not have any way to know that. I don't know. He's not like a religious studies expert or something. But no, nothing in the Bible is the origin of religion. There are older religious texts, and also the things that we call religion, like ritual practices around things like spirits or forces of nature, reverence for things, a profane, holy distinction, things like this. All of this predates writing as a whole, and we can tell because when we start getting writing, there are already ideas and practices like this that appear in the writing as like complex systems that are well established, right? There are already things like priestly castes and temples running economic systems within Sumerian cities and stuff when we get some of our earliest linguistic evidence of writing. So like no, and it's even not the case that the Septuagint or the New Testament are the earliest texts within either Christianity or Judaism as a taken together as like a single tradition that splits off into 2 sections as we're going forward into the Common Era. The Bible itself, the Hebrew Old Testament, contains fragments of older texts from other groups, right? Like there are sections in the Psalms that are basically taken and only slightly modified from even older texts from like Ugarit and things like that, right? So no is the answer. Well, let's hear what Amon's answer. Sorry.
Before you go, you make an important point though that I think is worth emphasizing. I have been on the Danny Jones podcast, and I can't emphasize enough how much his ignorance on these topics is an obstacle toward having any kind of productive conversation, and that's something that like that is. And this is honestly why, I mean, if I got a call from Joe Rogan tomorrow and said, we want you on the Joe Rogan show, I would probably say yes, just because of the exposure. But this is why this is such a bad idea. It's a bad idea with Danny, It's a bad idea with Joe Rogan because no matter what you do, no matter what you say, the direction of the conversation is always going to steer back into the wooiest shit that you have ever heard. So, and when you're in that situation, when he's asking you questions about things that you have no goddamn idea about, right? Like, what do you do except smile and nod and go, okay?
Right.
Of Christianity and Catholicism and baptism and all this stuff.
So even there, that's not the case, right? These are not the ultimate origins of these things. We don't likely have the ability to uncover the ultimate first origins of things like what would that mean, right? So Christianity grows out of Second Temple Judaism, which grows out of like this milieu of, returned exiles as sort of elites and like, older First Temple beliefs, Yahwism, which itself grows out of syncretistic beliefs of like a foreign god mixing in with the Canaanite pantheon, and that Canaanite pantheon itself has connections to other religious groups like the Sumerian gods and things like that. And so like where would you even say that this is the origin of the thing, right? It's like saying, hey, is this the origin of language? What? There's no way to recover that, right? There's always an earlier thing that you could point to that, or at the very least infer very, very strongly. Let's see. We got a membership milestone chat. Ashley Loves Baha'i, who's been a member for 14 months, says, at the tetrapod level, it says AIG equals Intel's PP package with a parentheses, clock speed of 4. I'm going to go ahead and take a drink. Thank you very much. All right. So here we go.
Is this like the originals?
Yeah, this is the language that held that, all of those texts. So the New Testament's all written in ancient Greek.
This is the language that held that, all of those texts. Is that a sentence fragment?
It's so what it is he has a sentence in mind and then he revises it as he's going. And so the word that's one of those things where like if you're writing your first draft, you fix the sentence, then you go back and do the second draft, but he's speaking extemporaneously. So I'm going to let that one go as far as I'm concerned. Because I correct sentences midstream before it happens.
Here's the thing: I think it might be my neurochemical wiring here, but when I listen to people talk, when they're editing their draft as they speak, it makes it nearly impossible for me to follow what they're trying to say.
Yeah, that can happen.
I do that quite a bit. I think actually. He's right though. At this point, up to this point, he's right. The New Testament was written in ancient Greek. Now, something that has been pointed out about Amon is that the New Testament specifically is written in Koine, as is the Septuagint. And when he approaches the text, he's almost always evaluating it on the basis of his broader knowledge of classical Greek. And there are important differences in terms of, because it's the formal version of a language is always going to different from the vernacular, and that's what we're talking about here, right? With the Koine, the New Testament texts are written in the common vernacular of what the people spoke. It's often described as gutter Greek, which I think is unfair.
That's not cool.
No. And it possesses a different sort of level of sophistication, in the same way that vernacular expressions are not always going to, they are not always going to look exactly like what's in the formal language.
Yeah.
So when I think just at the outset, a fair criticism of Amon Hillman's handling of all the biblical literature is that because he doesn't appear to even understand the difference between what takes place in a vernacular when compared to a formal written version, like high forms of the language, he gets a whole bunch of things wrong constantly.
Oh my god!
Actually, I'm going to give a little bit of pushback on that, and it's not in the direction of favoring Amon, if you're worried about that, because I've also seen him in other contexts get classical Greek badly wrong to the point that I question his actual ability to read Greek at all.
Yeah,
that is fair.
Yeah.
So I don't
Also-
actually think Amon speaks or reads Greek in any way other than he can pick out individual letters and he roughly knows what each combination of letters is, but he seems to ignore accent marks. He seems to be incapable of noticing large aspects of grammar. In fact, sometimes he gets whether or not a verb is being negated wrong. Like that's basic, right? He doesn't know the difference between I didn't cook an egg and I cooked an egg. That's like it's real basic stuff, and he will miss it. He will get wrong what noun is the direct object of a verb in some cases. Like it's real bad. So
also in the chat, Chris Decker wins for today. The Trump Bible's being written in Bitcoin.
Tree Clam Tad for $2 says, I have never been as high as Amon is sober. I've never been as high as Amon is sober. So here's the thing. I've actually encountered a very old clip of him back before he shaved his head, and he didn't talk like this. He talked like a normal human. He wasn't swaying around. He had that sort of high-pitched nasally voice that he has, but like he used it like a normal human. He didn't sound like an alien who's high. So yeah, something has happened between that period where he was actually clearly doing some like actual teaching. I think he was actually during his time as an adjunct professor, and now something has happened to this man, and I suspect it's self-inflicted. But
listen, having grown up in the 90s. I remember the commercials of the egg in the pan. This is your brain. And then this is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
Let's see. Liz.
So I do know what happened to Amon Hillman. It's easy to find out. We're not going to talk about it. People can go dig it up for themselves if
I'll have you
curious.
message it to me, though.
Sure. I wanted to say one other thing about my one interaction with him, and this was a huge mistake on my part, but at the same time understandable in how he was presented to me. I made the mistake of deferring to him in the outset with the expectation that he knew what he was talking about when it came to that's his handling of at least the Greek text.
Yeah,
exactly. And it took some time of like watching him in the intervening weeks and months after that to go, oh, wow, he doesn't even know that.
Yeah. I feel like it's possible that my handle of Greek grammar might be better than his. My vocabulary is probably lower, but my grammar might be better.
Absolutely damning.
Yeah, and my grammar is not very good. Liz D, who's been a member for 20 months and is at the Amniote level, says, hey, Dapper, look, 20 months, AIG is still a bag of Cantovans and will take a drink, and they would hate to be described that way because they do not like him.
That's fun. That is fun.
All right, so here we go. We're actually not going to play a whole lot more past this. We're just going to get his sort of basic claim here. And I'm going to let it play for, like, I don't know, probably like 10 seconds. So everyone, shh.
I did want to hear him talk about the Dead Sea. He does talk a little bit about the Dead Sea.
What you call the Old Testament, and I'm going to shock people with this one. What you call the Old Testament, which people say is written in Hebrew, right? Which is not a language that I work with. I had to take a little.
Which means he's not qualified to talk about this. But okay.
He's a modern Hebrew when I was there, just because it was part of the education. And, but the text that you think is not, it's a Greek text that's written in the 3rd century. It's a Hellenistic text called, that you call the Torah or the Old Testament. That is not an original Hebrew text.
That's true. They are not.
Those are not interchangeable.
Yep. You could say that the Torah is a subset of the Old Testament if we're talking from a Christian perspective, or a subset of the Tanakh if we're going from a Jewish perspective. It's the T at the beginning of Tanakh because that's an acronym in case you didn't know.
Yeah, it's an acronym.
Now, how can I say that? What we have is the Septuagint that I'm talking about. It's the Greek Old Testament. Do you understand Greek Old Testament?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's the oldest form that we've got.
Okay.
Okay. The whole big deal about the Dead Sea Scrolls was they said, we finally have some Hebrew, because none of it survives, right? Hebrew is only an 8.
That's incorrect.
It's only an 8,000 word.
Yeah.
That's incorrect.
Lieutenant Math Navigator for $2 says, this man would fit right in Florida. Correct.
Ancient Hebrew,
Indeed.
8,000 word, unique word count language.
Okay.
Which puts it in the realm of something you could expend by the end of your breakfast.
So we're actually going to basically stop it
Wrong.
there because we've already covered all that, and that's basically all he has about why this Dead Sea Scrolls are fake. So we're going to pivot a little bit.
He did say, didn't he? I was looking something up in the book, but at one point he did say that among the Dead Sea Scrolls there were manuscripts of Hebrew and Greek,
which is true, isn't it?
That is true.
Yeah,
very true. But there is a glaring important omission there that I think has huge implications for how he wants to model this. And it's something that he ignores at all costs, is that, yes, there are a small number of fragments among the discoveries of the Dead Sea Scrolls of the biblical text in Greek. They're small, and there's not that many. But what there is in considerable greater abundance are Aramaic texts. And like a bunch of these are, straight up just copies of Aramaic that's preserved in the Bible. But then there's a huge number of texts written in Aramaic literature that is riffing off of stories from the Bible and various theologies within the Bible. And then there's also a sizable number of Aramaic translations or, for lack of a better term, paraphrases, midrashim of biblical texts and stories. And the Aramaic is substantial when compared to the Greek. Yeah. The ages of the text, the manuscripts that we have in Aramaic are by and large older than the smattering of Greek fragments. And it's just, the model just completely disintegrates on all the other levels that the model disintegrates. The model just completely disintegrates the moment you introduce Aramaic literature into this conversation. It's over, because it no longer works. Amon's idea just no longer functions as soon as you introduce that fact into evidence. So,
all right.
And I will say quickly that the tiny handful of fragments of Greek fragments that we have in the Dead Sea Scrolls are our oldest copies, our oldest evidence, actual tangible manuscript evidence for the Septuagint.
Right, which means the Septuagint isn't older than the Hebrew, in fact.
That's the interesting thing here, is that our oldest manuscripts in the Dead Sea Scrolls tend mostly to be Hebrew and Aramaic.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of a pivot because there actually isn't that much more to this topic on Amon, and most of his topics are not actually about the most of what he talks about is not the Hebrew Bible being priority given to Greek, where the Septuagint is the original. Most of what he talks about is stuff that's not terribly safe for YouTube, and so I'm not actually going to talk about it, at least not right now. What I do want to do though is this. Okay, I think everyone is aware that most conspiracy theories, if you go too far down that rabbit hole, end with, and it's all the Jews' fault.
Yep.
Okay.
Including this one.
Yeah, including this
Yep.
one. So what I want to do is talk about a somewhat different set of conspiracy theories, or perhaps pseudo-linguistic nonsense that surrounds Hebrew, especially modern Hebrew, because there's a lot of weirdness that goes on around that. And part of that is anti-Semitism. I think part of it is trying to discredit the validity of Zionism, both for anti-Semitic reasons, and also maybe to some degree for like, hey, the state of Israel is doing horrific shit all the time, and we would like to discredit them as a legitimate place. But that ends up in...
delegitimize their identity, and if I can say that their language is fake, then their state's going to evaporate into nothing. Ha ha!
Exactly. It's like some kind of undermining.
Does not work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't. So I want to talk a little bit about like Hebrew as a thing that continues on from the first century into the modern period, right? So in the first century, we don't have a lot of Hebrew speakers, most likely. It seems like there was a community or communities around like Judea, like the actual like heartland around the southern area that's now, or was the Roman Palestine, that's now Israel Palestine, where even into like the second or possibly the third centuries, there were people who were speaking Hebrew as like their daily language, but it dies out as a living language around that time. But it doesn't die out as a language that people are using. People aren't speaking it at home, and they aren't growing up learning it as their first language, but it's still used for religious treatises. It's still used, very importantly, the Mishnah, which is a commentary on, the Hebrew scriptures, gets written consciously in Hebrew in order to help preserve the language. So there are people who are making an active choice to use Hebrew when they did not have to. And so it becomes not just the liturgical language of Judaism, but also it becomes a scholarly language, because, the Mishnah isn't a liturgical text. It's a scholarly text. And there is a difference there. Like
Sorry.
Yeah, the Mishnah is...
I think a good modern analogy to this is basically what happens in the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
Latin continues as a liturgical language, but also, I mean, you can go to, I mean, if you're like important enough, I guess, to go to the Vatican and interact with cardinals and bishops who, are there. I mean, they will interact in conversational Latin. The Pope will deliver sermons in Latin. Like this is sort of how, as a functional language outside of this very tight little community, it's just not. It doesn't, right? But they keep it going. I think that's probably a similar way in which Hebrew was functioning within those early centuries.
All right,
late centuries BCE, early century CE, right?
I want to acknowledge some gifted memberships, and then we'll go to Vish, and then we'll continue. So Pega Jace just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaurs memberships. Thank you. I took the 5 drinks while Kip was talking. Vish, what did you have?
So the Mishnah is the first layer of what eventually became the Talmuds.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's more than one. And it is not necessarily a commentary on the Bible.
Okay.
Those are like different. That's a different kind of like category of texts.
Fair enough, yeah.
The Midrash is set up as ostensible dialogues between early 1st through maybe 5th century rabbis discussing certain practices of Judaism. Like the very, very, very first one that they open with is like how many times a day you say the Shema and how long you have at the end of the day to say it before it becomes the next day and you missed the shot, right? So that's literally the first word of the text is me'ematai. From when can you say the Shema? And they go off on a whole thing. And then there's the Gemara, which is the layer that was added subsequently to that, sometimes it clarifies or asks more prompting questions, and then those two units together form what we call the Talmud.
Right.
And in that, you've got that combo. There are glosses and commentaries and references and the Tosafot, all these other layers that were stitched onto it. And that kind of entire corpus becomes what we just commonly call the Talmud. We tend to include prominent commentators as part of that. So it's
Right.
like this
But most of that's in Aramaic, right?
snowball. Some of it's in Aramaic. The Talmud tends to switch back and forth just whenever it feels like it. Which is fun because in our classes when we're studying it, we're like, wait, why can't we figure this word out? What's going on? Oh, it's Aramaic.
Yeah. All right, but we have to
Just,
get back to the history of Hebrew because we only have about 20 minutes before we want to go to break. So Arrow Dodger for $4.99 says, everyone subscribed to Kip and watched his stream yesterday for massive psychic damage. So you've been warned, but do it. All right, so after this...
Oh, that bad, eh?
Apparently. So Hebrew retains its use as a literary and liturgical, and in some cases as a scholarly language, right? So, like, I believe Maimonides writes his philosophical treatises in Hebrew. There are occasions...
And largely Judeo-Arabic.
Yeah. There are also cases where Jewish communities across different parts of the world that do not share a common first language will communicate to each other, whether in letters or whatever, in Hebrew, because it's a language that both communities study. And so, there's another Mothra. Drink for Mothra.
Mothra!
And so in the modern period, Hebrew starts being used by Jewish communities for sort of like pan-Jewish communication. And it's not super common for people to try to use it in everyday life, but you get things like newspapers and books being written in Hebrew before like the 1920s and 30s, which is going to be a big shift in the history of Hebrew for obvious reasons, in case you don't know anything about history. So
Yeah, you know.
Right, so we're talking like pre-Holocaust, Hebrew is having a sort of a revival among Jewish communities, right? They're using it for a lot of things, but one of the problems that they're running into is that if you want to have a newspaper in Hebrew, you need to figure out what to call modern concepts that didn't exist when the language was still a living language, or even when like various bits of the Talmud were being written, right? So like there were Hebrew newspapers covering the Civil War in the United States, and they just had to come up with words for things like president. So if I remember correctly, they ended up using a word that just basically meant like was used for like various like chieftains of like groups that were around in like the early Iron Age for president. And it's like, oh, sure, I guess. Why not? So then, of course, we get to the Holocaust, which we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on because it itself doesn't change Hebrew much. But what does change Hebrew is Zionism, right? Which starts before that. But obviously, the Holocaust gives sort of the impetus to other parts of the world, other than the actual Jewish community, to get a plot of land for Jews. Now, we're not going to go into the whole, like, the Nakba and the horrible mistreatment of the Palestinians, because it is absolutely true, but it's not the same topic as this. And I think everyone who has seen me do anything about this topic knows that I am definitely a big-time supporter of freedom for the Palestinians, and that I am not a big fan of anything that the State of Israel has been doing lately in that regard. So, but we're not going to super get into it because we have to go relatively fast. So this is where a lot of conspiracy theories come in, right? So for a while, it wasn't clear what language Israel would use. And some people thought maybe German, because that was probably the largest first language that was there other than Yiddish. But a lot of people didn't like Yiddish because of it was sort of stigmatized even among Yiddish speakers as a language of exile. And so there was a lot of going back and forth, like Yiddish. Well, there's other, diaspora languages that Jewish people are speaking, like Ladino and things like that. There's also a lot of Arabic going on in the area. And again, German had a bit of a heyday, but eventually, through the work of a number of people, the most famous of whom being Eliezer ben Yehuda, Hebrew starts to take over, but they still have that persistent problem, right? We don't have enough words. So a group of people, of whom Eliezer is one of the big ones, comes up with a system for creating neologisms, right? So one of the first ones is, okay, can we just find a Hebrew word that works and just use it? And if the answer is no, then it's like, okay, well, let's look at what the common word is, and we'll try to do like an etymological like back formation. So, for instance, the word for electricity comes from the word for like amber in Greek, and so modern Hebrew starts using a word derived from the Hebrew word for amber for electricity. Okay,
Somebody
weird.
else watched Sled this week.
Yeah, well, I was doing research, right? So, but then after that, there's also just loan words, right? And so the primary sources for loan words are Arabic, then Aramaic, then comes like a smattering of other things like Latin, English, German, other things get in there. And so this starts getting compiled. And what happens now is that you'll get a few things. Well, first of all, Petite Flower, who's been a member for 6 months and is at the amulet level, says, "Thank you for acknowledging nuance." I try, right? We're a big fan of all that nuance, even if it's unwelcome. So one of the crazy
super chat about it.
Oh, did I miss a super chat? I did. No, I read that one from Arrow Dodger.
Yeah,
I read that one.
Okay.
Okay, so lost my train of thought. Right, so here's where some of the conspiracy theories come in. One of them is that Hebrew is just a made-up language that Eliezer ben Yehuda came up with, and that it has really nothing to do with ancient Hebrew, except that it has, like, basically, they'll say that he either took German or Yiddish, which are already very similar languages, and he just replaced the words with Hebrew words. And that doesn't work for a number of reasons. For one thing, Hebrew and Yiddish have too many cases compared to modern Hebrew, which basically just has a construct state and just the normal form of nouns. So that doesn't work. It has different typical word orders. It still retains like a lot of the Semitic way that you do things. Like we have 3-letter roots, and you can put infixes and prefixes and suffixes and different vowels in between those consonantal roots to create things. So it still functions very much like this. And also an important thing is there isn't a break where Hebrew stops being used and then is revived in the sense of now people are using it again. There was never a point in history where no one was using Hebrew for communication. That didn't happen. And modern Hebrew is a continuation of that. Another thing that you'll hear is that it doesn't count as a real Semitic language because of its revival, which I think we can say pretty safely that doesn't make any sense, right? Like, is the Latin spoken in the Vatican no longer like an Italic Indo-European language for some reason? Because they have new words. They came up with words for motorcycle. Does that make sense? I don't think it does. And so I wanted to cover like a lot of the things that you will hear in certain conspiracy or anti-Zionist circles that are not being careful in the anti-Zionist section, or they're just crazy in the conspiracy section, have a lot of these claims, and they're just not really true. All that happened was that some people came together to fill in gaps in vocabulary, and that made it possible to use it as a modern language, really.
Like, I mean, that is simplifying things a little bit.
Well, yeah, but I only have like 10 minutes.
Fair. So I think it's worthwhile pointing out that like it is the modern Hebrew is developed on the basis of the forms that preceded it, right? Including biblical Hebrew. But it's obviously modernized in ways that make sense for just promoting modern communication. Boy,
I know Mothra's very busy today. Yeah.
Today. It's just wow. So and one of a good example of that is that and this is something that so I'll just say like a good example of that is the system for verbs that is in place in the ancient world, right? Like it with ancient Hebrew is just it's different. And they basically abandoned most of the classical forms, have retained some of them for specific words, but it just doesn't function quite the same because it's archaic. It's
although
clumsy
one thing,
in terms of the modern needs of the language, right? So and this is something I'll just say this, Dapper. This comes this is something that becomes abundantly obvious whenever I have conversations or interactions with native Hebrew speakers about the Bible.
Yes.
In specific, like in particular, I've had I do a show every Thursday night where we read biblical texts in Hebrew, and we talk about the text. And I have had like there have been a couple of times where I've had a native modern Hebrew speaker who's intensely interested in the biblical text on the show, and I've basically had to walk them through the syntactical construction of what's going. They can read the text without any problems, right?
Right.
They don't understand the philology.
Yeah.
Of, and because it's functioning on a different level.
And also, one thing is that even with this, where some of the biggest differences between ancient Hebrew and modern Hebrew are in the verbal system, that's actually not something that occurs at the point of the revival of Hebrew. A lot of that actually happens even earlier than that. So you can see in things like medieval Hebrew where certain aspectual differences or certain aspectual forms like imperfect or pluperfect, or not pluperfect, but perfect in ancient Hebrew start being used for tense instead. And so you start getting a past and present tense and not really paying much attention to the aspectual distinctions. And so, once again, just the fact that Hebrew changes in its use over time means that it's not a stagnant thing that was then just changed in like the mid 20th century to become a new thing for the state of Israel. It is, in fact, modern Hebrew is, in fact, a continuation of an actively used language that had been used from thousands of years ago up until that point. And so that is another thing that's important. It wasn't that, Eliezer ben Yehuda sat down one day. He was like, all right, I've got all these dusty tomes. I'm going to brush them off. Okay, what do I got? I don't like that. Let's change a whole bunch of it. And there we go. That's just not what happened. We've got a couple things here. Tree Clam Tad for $2 says, Hebrew isn't a Semitic language because reasons. Exactly. Scott Duke for $2 says, I just love these little get-togethers. Me too. Basically, I went through this video and I was like, there's almost nothing of substance in this. And so I was like, we're just going to have a little chat about Hebrew in 2 sections, because after the break, Kip is going to come back and he's going to take us through all this nerdy stuff that he wants to talk about.
You told me I could talk about a few of these things and you did it instead. So I'm going to speak for a few minutes about
Do it. You know what? Speak for at least the next 7 minutes.
So I really wish that we didn't refer to this as the revival of Hebrew, because that implies it was dead, it was stagnant, it wasn't doing anything, people weren't using it. Like, people have, since Hebrew distinguished itself from the broader Canaanite family, it has been continuously used. It is read in the synagogues every week and has been for centuries, sometimes multiple times a week. People were praying and reading in Hebrew. This was not something that nobody understood. Just because, hey, you're living in Greece or Italy or Iberia and people don't speak that language, so you have to learn theirs, that does not have anything to do with whether people are maintaining Hebrew. Your outside, I'm going shopping language isn't the language you're using inside your community. And I wish that we would refer to the campaign to update it as either updating Hebrew or refreshing Hebrew. And that campaign started decades before the Holocaust, before World War II, before even World War I. There's a whole history of the old Yishuv of people trying to intentionally migrate back to, the land of Palestine. That also happened decades before even World War I. So in addition to that, when there's this idea of, we need to create a national identity in the 40s and we need to figure out what language to speak, the Jews that had been living in Jerusalem and in Palestine literally for centuries, a lot of them, in addition to the Hebrew they were speaking, they spoke Arabic.
Yep.
They still continue to speak Arabic. But obviously there's a campaign there in the 40s to create an identity separate from the Arabs. So they're like, well, we can't use that. So that's the thing. a lot of the language that we use to describe these events in history tends to be loaded, and that feeds into like national and anti-nationalist propaganda, both directions. So calling it fake, obviously that's stupid and ignorant. It's also ineffective when you're trying to talk about identity, because that's not how identities work. It's the same thing with, the r/atheist types that are like, oh, Jesus was never real. Haha, stupid Christians. Christianity is not going to evaporate if you try to demonstrate that Jesus wasn't real. That's not how that works. So, the other thing is that, like, Hebrew as a language, if you're writing texts that are commenting on the Bible or updating liturgy, if you're composing poetry that we call piyutim, you're composing new works in that language. Somebody has to understand it. So this idea that like, it's just not really being used outside like special use cases like that is a little inaccurate in the sense that it gives people the wrong idea of like how common this was. Like, for instance, Maimonides, his first languages were, the Spanish of the time, and then he moves to Egypt and writes in Judeo-Arabic. So, like, nobody's going to tell him, yeah, well, this wasn't really an active language and it was kind of blah, blah, blah. He would just laugh and then go off and do his philosophy and doctor stuff. So, really, I think the more that you get into history and the more you want to engage with it, you really have to determine, is the language I'm using to describe this doing work that I don't need it to do, or that's causing secondary effects, right? I don't think I'm going to be the one that changes how people describe
Probably not.
Hebrew getting modernized. It would be nice if they called it a refresh or an updating or modernizing, but I am not confident that's going to happen as a result of my efforts. But yeah, be aware of how you think and talk about like this language specifically, because I've spoken to people who should know better, who are like, yeah, Jews in the days of Jesus didn't understand Hebrew, and they said it with their entire chest, and I had to restrain myself from attempting to break the laws of physics and reach through the computer and slap them in the mouth. Like,
Yeah, it's real dumb.
It's silly to read a story like, for instance, in the New Testament, Jesus stands up in the synagogue and reads from the scroll of Isaiah. What he wasn't reading in Greek, okay?
Yeah,
he
no,
was
probably
probably
not.
reading it in Hebrew. So to say that people didn't understand it, that is damn foolish.
As Tree Clam Ted says,
but
for
yeah.
$2, you have to hold Shift F5 to refresh Hebrew.
Exactly. That's right. So we did. We hit Shift F5. See? Easy peasy.
Awesome.
Just integrated words and grammar and changed the syntax a little.
It's actually not even that much. Like
it's really not.
Ancient Hebrew has a little bit more variety in word order than modern Hebrew, but modern Hebrew defaults to the most common word order, which is subject. Verb, subject, object, isn't it?
Yeah,
Usually,
Hebrew is
yeah.
VSO.
Yeah,
and that throws off a lot of people. It still throws me off.
Really?
To be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, there's times where when I'm having to flip back and forth between like English and Spanish or something in Hebrew, that my brain starts cross-wiring them, and that gets really fun.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and we are going to shift gears even more, and Kip is going to present...
This Ultra Hebrew.
Oh, no. Maybe we can get Agma Schwa on that. Actually, Agma Schwa was interested in this particular stream, and so I think what I might do is I might invite him on to take a look at some other Hebrew is fake, because I gave him exactly this claim, right, that Hebrew was a con language invented in like the 3rd century BCE by Greek-speaking Jews, which is he was just like, wow, every single bit of that is wrong. And I was like, yeah, you want to talk about it? He's like, I can't this week. So I think we might still talk about that. It might end up being not like a Saturday show. It might just end up being like a special stream at some point. But we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to have Kip pull up his what he wants to screen share with us during the break. And then we'll come back, and Kip is going to talk to us about what the Dead Sea Scrolls are, how we know that, like they're real. Because in case you didn't know, Kip has figured out that some things that were called Dead Sea Scroll fragments were fake, which means he has to have a standard for what counts as real. Otherwise, he's a fraud. So yeah,
That's true.
Yeah,
it's very true.
I'll just read this last super chat, and then we'll go right on break. So, Scott Duke for $5 says, if people like Jesus could read Hebrew, what does that say about literacy in Judea in those days? Could just any Jews read Hebrew so as to be literate? Actually, that's a question that I think we're going to answer when we come back, because I want to actually dive into that a little bit. So we're going to take a quick... Hold on. Sorry. Unfortunately, I had muted everyone because my plan was to quickly just go to intermission. So what we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to...
No worries, but I should probably answer that question.
Yeah, so we'll get that question. That'll be the first thing we do when we get back. So in the meantime, everybody, enjoy these musical stylings. And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us, those of you who did. So, we got a couple things. So, we have Scott Duke's question, which I did read, but I also want to read this other super chat, and then we're going to go back. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $5 says, English is a conlang created by King Jim the Sixth, and I, the Sixth, and I, to sell more Bibles. Oh, right. Okay. So I do want to go through the
working.
Quick little commercial thing before we get on to Scott Duke's very interesting question that I think there will be plenty to say about. So first, I want to say thank you guys so much. You guys have been amazing this month. It has been a rough, like 4 weeks, honestly. Everything seems to be just kind of falling apart around here. Even longer than that, right? Like there was the AC just shit itself. My computer decided to just kind of stop working. And you guys have really helped make that something that is not horrible for me. I mean, it's still been horrible, but like it could have been so much worse. And also the channel only exists because you guys help support it, whether it be financially or whatever. So I'm just going to say, hey, there's a Patreon, there's a channel membership. There's a discount on the Patreon. They both give you early access to scripted videos. They both give you access to my Discord server. And every super chat or gifted membership or anything like that helps. And at least for now, the fundraiser that I set up for computer repair and getting a supplemental laptop to help when I don't have my computer is still up if you want to give there. So that is still an option. I probably won't be promoting it on Tuesday or after that, but it'll probably still be open. I don't actually plan to close it down anytime soon. So like if you want to do one-time donations or something, that is a way that you can do it. So yeah, I'm going to reread Scott Duke's question, and then
I'll give a quick thing, and then Kip basically just gets to run the rest of the show.
Basically, yeah. Scott Duke for $5, as we said, if people like Jesus could read Hebrew, what does that say about literacy in Judea in those days? Could just any Jew read Hebrew so as to be literate?
So in that particular case, just setting aside the fact that it could be a polemic, it could be written, to make a point rather than reflecting accurate history, just setting that aside for the moment. He was said to have begun his studies very, very young. So he is an exception to probably most people just walking around at the time, where he had a proper education to learn to read and possibly write it. So his level of engagement and fluency would be a little bit above just average person. So that's him. Other people, as Egyptomaniac correctly says in the chat, is the problem with this language is that every possible level and variation of knowledge can and does exist in a community. You all know this, especially if you've been through like the American public school system.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who make straight A's through everything. There's people who get by and they're just doing okay. And then there's people who you wonder how they put their shoes on in the morning, right? So those people all get through the schooling system somehow. And there are people, in their adulthood who have trouble communicating or reading or writing things in their native language. So it is very dangerous to try to paint with a very broad brush when it comes to literacy in any era, much less the ancient, like 1st century, Second Temple Judaism period. So you would have had people like Jesus who could read it in addition to speaking it and hearing and understanding it. You would have had other people who could write it with various levels of fluency, because maybe they were historians or court folks who wrote legal documents. Maybe they were just doing other things. And then you had just average people. Some of them understood everything you were saying. Some of them understood part of it. Some of them were like, yeah, okay, I don't know what's going on. I'm going back to my Greek buddies. It was a whole spectrum of that. There are some scholarly works in the last 10 years that have been published on literacy rates. And even that, as in-depth as it is with all the research and the evidence that we have so far, even that's not giving you the full picture. And they acknowledge that. It's only like a glimpse into one specific little area. So yeah, it's definitely not as simple as everybody was a knuckle-dragging ignorant. And it's not, they all knew exactly what they were doing and they could all read and write it fluently. No, neither of those things are accurate. It was a very broad spectrum. And it's dangerous to engage with people who try to make it sound a lot more simple than that. And I think that's all I had to say about it. And Yeah, Kip finds it acceptable that he controls the last hour, so I will yield my time.
I do have to read a super chat, which is from Tree Clam Tad for $2, which says, "Take the laptop and go to the KJV museum," and that is in fact tempting.
Yes,
That is tempting.
do it.
Oh
Um,
yeah, right.
I don't know how it would
yeah.
broadcast because, like, unless they give me like their Wi-Fi or
Hmm.
something, I don't have a way to broadcast like from the laptop there. But
Well, they're in a hotel lobby. Oh no, a mall. That's right.
no,
They're
yeah,
in a
there's strip.
mall.
It's not even a mall; it's a
So
strip mall.
strip mall.
Yeah.
Strip mall. So yeah, probably no
Mhm.
good. I now with respect to Scott's question here,
You'll have to read
so
this question.
there are, if people, I have it up here still, if people like Jesus could read Hebrew, what does that say about literacy in Judea in those days? If people like
Oh, I
Jesus
thought you meant the
could
second
read
question.
Hebrew, and oh, sorry, no, and
Oh.
I was still stuck on this. But then if he could, then that would say that literacy was pretty widespread and dynamic, but there's no good reason to think that he did.
Nope.
Just by virtue of the things that historians and New Testament scholars think that they know about who Jesus was and where he came from. There are, and this is to the other part of that question, could just any Jew read Hebrew so as to be literate? Absolutely not. And there are, as Vish mentioned, studies about this. The most comprehensive one was by Catherine Hetcher, which was written up in 2006. It's over 600 pages long, and the conclusion that she drew through her investigation of literacy in Roman Palestine. So that's from basically the early 1st century BCE up through to the 2nd century CE, so roughly a 250-year period, maybe 300 years. The conclusion that she drew was that literacy was rare among people in Roman Palestine, that among the literate, most would in the first place, most people spoke Aramaic, and that there was spoken Hebrew, following a distant second to that, and Greek, even now I have to go back and look because I'm not entirely clear on this, but certainly in terms of literacy, Aramaic was most prominent. Most people who could read and write read and wrote Aramaic, with Hebrew coming in as in second place of that. And she actually makes a very important point in several pages of her conclusion to show that at the time, it does appear that while there was ongoing Hebrew literacy, this was dramatically affected by the already established liturgical place of this language. So it had a huge impact. And so in terms of the actual the raw numbers, she suggested that you're talking about like 10% of the population as the best case scenario for people who could read and write in any language, actually, at the time. The more recent study is by Michael Wise. I've referenced this one a few times in stuff that I've done. He published in 2019 or 2020, I think, and his study was of just establishing models of literacy on the basis of the Bar Kokhba finds and for the early 2nd century CE. But he basically echoes almost everything that Catherine Hetcher says, with some refinements. He has a more nuanced perspective of the contribution of the Dead Sea Scrolls to this conversation. What he says, actually, and I think this is pretty interesting too, is that the evidence from Qumran is an outlier in terms of how you're evaluating the whole population, because this was, by all by all seeming bits of evidence, an elite, like a group of people that came out of elite levels of society in the first place, that they were all connected to the priesthood in one way or another, where there was this focus on liturgical literacy. So it has an effect. Sorry, I rambled. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, I think I found it. It's the one that starts with Scottish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scottish was a language invented by Will Ferrell to sell more scotch. It worked. Unfortunately, the Buckfast hearsay ended the boom with a Mothra. So drink for Mothra.
Mothra. Also, there
Nice.
were requests to put the name of that book that studied literacy in the chat for people.
Oh, I will have to look those up. I can put, but honestly, if you do, I'll put the names. I think the easiest way to do this is just put the names of the authors.
Yeah.
People should be able to find them really easily. Just by typing these into.
Who was it in our scholar, I guess, corner of YouTube that recently did a live stream on this? Was it you? Was it Dan? Was it Josh? Was it Jordan? Somebody did it in the last few months.
Maybe Jordan.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Nice.
Wow. Very good. I love.
So he's eaten at
free
least
pizza.
twice in the last week. Okay. Cool.
Wow. Nice. So this is a really important resource if you're at all interested in any aspects of biblical studies, particularly
Dapper's a
the Old
professional. I was muted. I don't even know how that happened. I don't remember even clicking mute. So sorry, what I said was that we got $50 added to the to the fundraiser. Thank you, and also that Bent had gotten pizza twice, once for each of the last two streams. So yeah, I'm a professional. And yeah, Kip was in charge. He could have said anything. Actually, I would have muted him if he started going off crazy, but I would have also been muted, and it would have just been dead air.
That never happens.
Do you just forget that I exist today? Am I like invisible? Is that it?
Well, technically you're not on camera, so technically yes.
So you have the object permanence of a infant today?
After a bunch of gin, yeah.
Yes. Hey, what kind of gin are you drinking? Like what
this
brand?
Is Bombay Sapphire.
Okay. I'll allow it.
Look, it wasn't bottom of it wasn't bottom shelf, and it wasn't.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
I'll
allow it because it's what I drink begrudgingly if Hendrix is not available. So
this was.
Yeah, I'll let you slide.
Look, I got this to take the edge off a couple days ago. I wasn't buying Hendrix for that purpose.
I'm not judging. I love gin, so.
Also, I'm not sponsored by
anybody
any gin companies.
Knows me. Yeah, well, anybody that knows me well enough knows that gin is my preferred alcoholic choice. So.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
You want to get this next super chat?
Snobby about my gin.
Is this from Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $2?
Mm-hmm.
We've got a phantom muter on our hands.
Apparently, yeah. Like
But a geeky platypus librarian just wrote Jurassic Park taught us that T-Rex cannot see you if you don't move. I assume it's the same for Ceratosaurus. His vision's based on movement.
It is actually honestly easier for me to like see who's doing what when people are on camera, which I recognize. is a little bit hypocritical, since sometimes I wear my human
You're
suit
never.
and I'm not. That's not on camera, but my actual body is on camera. But I'm a very good ventriloquist, so it's confusing, and I get that.
Just because,
Amazing.
because my attention, because now I'm distracted.
Sorry.
Is that 100% bullshit, or is that based on any
The T-Rex thing?
anything? Yeah.
Oh no, it's 100%
BS.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't say it's impossible, but if it were true
Of course.
that the T-Rex's vision was based on movement, and if you didn't move, it couldn't see you, I would be shocked beyond words.
Look, evolution's a dumb process, but that's real dumb.
Right.
In terms of survivability.
That would be up there with like finding out T-Rex just didn't have skin. Be like, well, that seems unlikely, but like, okay.
So I think I always assumed that was reconstructed from like whatever people observe about certain
it was
types of
reconstructed
birds
from Michael Crichton's ass.
Yeah, there is no bird that has vision or movement-based vision, nor is it true of crocodilians. Nor is it true of turtles, and we're just getting farther and farther away from dinosaurs at this point. And like, that's just not how any vertebrate works, as far as I can tell. It's kind of true for flies, like dipterans. Like, it's kind of true for that, but like, no. But hey, we're not here to talk about flies. We're here to talk about Dead Sea Scrolls.
We are not. It's true. So I do feel like now I owe an apology, because Scott posted in the chat that the Hetcher book about literacy in Roman Palestine is $202. And I'm sorry. I can't, unfortunately, I have no control over that. I am certain though that the Michael Wise book is more affordable. It's published by Yale Doubleday in the Yale Anchor Yale Resource Series. So I'm fairly sure that is a more accessible one. All right. Now, do you want to ask your question about this again, now that everybody can hear you?
Yeah, what are we looking at here? What is this?
So this is what we're looking at, is the Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls Digital Library, which is like a hugely important site for anybody who's interested in, well, the Dead Sea Scrolls in the first place, but I would say even just biblical studies, or ancient Judaism, early Judaism, history, religion, these sorts of things. Because what this is it's a comprehensive database of the entire collection of Dead Sea Scrolls, the photographs, a comprehensive database of photographs of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Importantly, there's almost all of them, there are recent photos, and by recent I mean photographs that were taken between the years 2010 and I think 2016 or 2017 was the last time they did a major update of the site. All the photographs are in extremely high quality, and there are photographs of everything in both like natural light as well as in infrared. So you can look at manuscripts just as they appear in natural light, and for lots of them you can actually see what's written on them because of the infrared photographs. But I suggested bringing this up because in view of the incredibly stupid way that Amon Hillman wanted to present this, there's a number of important features of the Dead Sea Scrolls which speak to our knowledge about the history of the biblical text, about the history of the circulation of Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek literature, and just the history of Judaism and the textual criticism of the Bible more generally.
Okay, so I guess my next question, because now I'm defaulting to an interview style, And I've interviewed you at
Yeah.
least once, Kip.
That's an okay way of doing this, I think, right? If
Yeah.
you do it that way.
So,
Sure.
so Kip, you have been involved in determining that some, I'll say manuscripts because I think that's reasonable, that were held on to by the Museum of the Bible that were claimed to be fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls were not. And so I'm not asking you to go through how you knew that they weren't, but what I would like to say is, what is it that is characteristic of an authentic Dead Sea Scroll manuscript that these things might have lacked? How do we tell that something is real? Because in order to say that something's fake, you have to have a standard for what counts as a real Dead Sea Scroll fragment.
Yeah. So combination of several things. I think it's important to point out in the first place that almost the vast majority of the Dead Sea Scrolls are technically not provenanced. What I mean by that is that most of them were discovered and removed from the place where they were discovered by non-professionals, and they were acquired by the École Biblique, which is the French school, the French Dominican school of archaeology in East Jerusalem. But and you know that's how we know the collection. So that's a problem. However, it's not an insurmountable problem, in that in addition to a lot of the non-provenanced materials that were discovered, all the caves, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. The Dead Sea Scrolls, those that are associated with this site, Qumran, were discovered in 11 caves. And you can see here they are listed in terms of their contents in the brackets. These are the numbers of individual manuscripts, not the individual fragments, the individual manuscripts that they have photographs for in each and every cave. Something that you'll notice is that cave 10 is not represented here because they just found no texts in cave 10. So it just doesn't. There's no Dead Sea Scrolls found in cave 10, even though it was one of the. There are other things found there. So, but archaeological excavations have been performed on all of the caves. For a bunch of them, in particular for Cave 4 and Cave 1, where, most of the textual material came from, something that archaeologists did find in situ were fragments of manuscripts, and they were able to, after the fact, actually match some of those fragments discovered in some of these caves with manuscripts that were brought in by the people who had removed them from these sites. So it's not like it's not the best, but it's not an insurmountable situation. I'll point out that a large number of the manuscripts themselves have been carbon dated, so we know that they're as old as they claim to be. The manuscripts have been let me think here. The manuscripts have all been additionally dated paleographically, meaning that we look at script styles and are able to ballpark ranges of when whenabouts these were written. It's not especially precise, but it's a useful way, a useful non-destructive way of establishing dates for the material. So these are the basic ways in which we are confident that these things are real. And I think too they fit into a pattern of Jewish history and textual history that has tremendously helped to expand the ways in which we know about early Judaism, the ways in which we know about the development of the biblical text. Importantly, They didn't fit into existing ways in which these things were understood or believed for like at the time when they were discovered. The Dead Sea Scrolls undoubtedly have muddied the waters of some of these, clean, tight ways in which scholars once appraised the situation of religion and textual criticism and history from the period. But I think this is really important too, in terms of speaking towards their authenticity, because history is so messy. Yes, they fit patterns that make good sense, but also in ways that look exceptionally real. So everybody kind of had to go back to the drawing board when it came to figuring out the textual history of the Hebrew Bible. And in some ways, earlier theories looked generally like they made good sense, but again, it's the manuscripts have further just nuanced and complicated the situation, and in ways that I think you just can't fake, right? So there's that. And I'll say one more thing. Like one of the things about, and I'll just pull up an example here. I encourage, there should be, I think you included a link to this, and I encourage that everybody take note of the site and use it, because it's really cool. It's very accessible. It's fun just to look at these things. So I'm going to pull up a fragment. I think it's this one here. So this is a manuscript that I did my PhD work on. This is fun because here you have, and I'll make this full screen. So these are the like natural light pictures of the fragments, and you can see
real quick, Dapper's a professional. Sorry about that. I made a mistake, but everyone could hear you the whole time, so don't worry. It's not that. It was a visual mistake that didn't affect you.
Okay. Do you want to do the super chats while
yeah, sure. Let's see. But Tree Clam Tad says for $2, but carbon dating didn't work before 72 CE. Yeah, if you're a young Earth creationist, that might be true. Also, we have a couple things. Helen R. just signed up for Kip's Hebrew course. Josh's textbook on order. The link for the Hebrew course, by the way, is in the description. So if you want to learn Hebrew from Kip, go click on that link. So let's see.
It's so fun.
Egyptomaniac says bibliographies would be great. Maybe put them in the comments later or in Discord. We could all help out and find and add which books paper. Yeah, look, if there is something we referenced here, or that anyone on the panel referenced, and you send it to me, I can add it to the description trivially easily. So please do send those things if you have them. That includes you and you, Kip. Send me those links, or just the names and titles and whatnot.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a natural light picture of fragments from one of the manuscripts that I worked on for my PhD dissertation. You can see that they're really, really hard to read, right? Because of the way that they've deteriorated and been damaged over the course of a couple thousand years. The funny thing about this particular picture that you won't know unless you're me, or maybe somebody else who actually works on this manuscript, is that all of these fragments are pictured upside down, which is fun. But this particular one here, if I just click on it, see, now it's right side up, and it takes you to an infrared photograph of that particular fragment. So this is
so clear
what's taking place. I know, right? And these are like exceptionally high quality photographs.
That's
look at
holy crap.
That.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. So the text on, you can see it's like parts of two columns. You've got a column of text on the right, and then there's like a gap.
Yeah.
And then there's the beginning of some text on the left, right? So we're able to, like, based on what's here, you can see that in the first column, it's like Jeremiah. It's like a retelling of the last couple of chapters of Jeremiah, where he's a Nebuzaradan, who's like the top general for Nebuchadnezzar, kills the king, or sorry, kills all the king's sons and gouges out his eyes and puts him in chains and leads him in the exile's way, right? Like this is this story, and they say, to Jeremiah, they're like, well, you can go, you can come with us with the exiles when we go home, or you can stay here. You can do whatever you want, right?
Real quick,
so that's that part of the story.
I want to say real quick, thank you to Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. I will be taking some drinks as Kip talks the next bit.
Yeah. So, and then in the next column, you can see just a handful of words here, but this first one is really important. This is betachvanes. So this tells us right away that the reference point is Jeremiah chapter 44, where he's like captured and taken off with a bunch of people to go live in Egypt among the Jews fleeing from Jerusalem, right? So that's kind of what's going on here. And what we do as scholars when we approach a text like this is basically guesstimate based on what's here, what to fill in the blanks. Obviously, there's lots of places where there's just not enough material to be able to do that. But sometimes you get a pretty good sense of what you think belongs in the gaps. In particular on this one, it's way easier, right? Because I've got a lot more text to work with. Right. And if I'm following just the biblical text, even though this isn't identical to the biblical text, it's close enough. If I'm following along, I'm able to make good educated guesses as to what's in the gaps. Now, when I was working on, there was work done on this particular fragment before I did, and this was reconstructed, and I was just following the reconstruction. In the time that I was working on this particular fragment, a colleague of mine was able to identify another fragment, a small fragment, with this particular manuscript that filled in one of these blanks. And the thing that we discovered is that it did not match the guess. It was different, right? And I think this is something that happens just about in every case. No matter what we think might be there, we're probably wrong. We probably are.
So,
and yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question. Because to me, now I'm not like, a professional textual critic or a philologist or anything, but to me, the idea that we would have variants from what we find both in the Septuagint and in the Masoretic text, which is, as far as I know, is true. We find variants that match neither of them. That seems to me to indicate that it would weaken Amon and Hillman's case for the priority of the Septuagint, in that we have other readings that would not reflect a translation back from Greek. We should expect everything to sort of match with the Greek and be explainable as a variant from that within a Hebrew manuscript tradition, if that were the case. But it doesn't seem like what we see, even just in terms of the actual variants within the text. They don't seem to make sense in that. Am I wrong about that, or is that a reasonable inference?
You are absolutely correct about that. I'm trying to pull up. I can never remember the number. No, that's not it. I think I have to go back. I'm going to try and pull up here a very good example of just what you're talking about, Dapper.
Tree Clam Tad says, hashtag Dapper is a philologist. No, stop it. I'm definitely not a philologist. I'm even less of a philologist than I am a linguist.
God damn. So one of the things that you point to, as I sort through what exactly I'm looking for here, I can't believe I'm blanking on it. Some of the problem has to do with the way with the way the site itself is organized. Is unfortunately not it's not organized to correspond always to the way scholars have organized the material, which is lots of fun, honestly. So I'm being facetious there, but
no,
I just need to pull up here something so I can sort out exactly what I'm looking for. But you make a really important point, because while we talked a little bit about the fact that there were Greek fragments in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fragments of actual Greek text, fragments of so-called biblical Greek texts, something that we have not talked about much at all, which is really important to this conversation, is the fact that there were Hebrew fragments of the so-called text type or the version that's preserved in the Septuagint.
Right.
But written in Hebrew. So for those who don't know, and I suspect now the way what Amon Hillman does when he talks about this is he will suggest that because the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint, is so much more developed in a lot of places, he will just go on to say that it shows that it's original because you can't go backwards, right? You can't go from this more developed text to a simpler text, something like that. It's the dumbest argument I think I might have ever heard, but something that he's picking up on but not even aware of, I think, is that the version of the Hebrew text in a lot of places in that Greek translation is just a different text type altogether. Like it's a different version of the same text, and this is something we've known for a long time as scholars when approaching the Septuagint.
I kind of want to rephrase that a little
ahead.
bit to make sure that the audience gets that, because I feel like text type is not a thing that that most people know about. So basically, what we're or what Kip is saying, as far as I understand it, is that there are places where what's in the Septuagint, if you were to back translate it to Hebrew, you would not actually get what we get in the Masoretic text, which is what we usually base our understanding of what's in the Hebrew text of the Old Testament. So you will get to sections where the two differ in the basic meaning. And so if you were to translate either one of them to English, you would translate different sentences. They don't say the same thing, but there are cases where in the Dead Sea Scrolls, you get a Hebrew manuscript that actually does seem to match more closely with what's in the Septuagint than what's in the Masoretic text, which means that there might have been two different lines of descent of Hebrew manuscripts, and one of them leads to the Masoretic text, and the other one is now mostly extinct in terms of Hebrew manuscripts, but it's still the textual tradition that the Septuagint is translating from when it's translating Hebrew into Greek.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out, Dapper. That's a much better way.
I try
of putting it. So yeah, no, that was good. So, and this is a really important point, because this is something that scholars already knew for a long time, even before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, that the Septuagint was working from a different kind of text in a lot of places than what survives in our standard Hebrew text, which is the Masoretic text. And what is really exciting about some of the material that was discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls is that for the first time we have Hebrew versions of that particular text type of the Septuagint. And my favorite one, and probably the most famous one, this is one that Dan McClellan talks about all the time. When he talks about textual differences with Christian apologists in the biblical text, he's like, well, go and take a look at what the Dead Sea Scrolls do with the book of Jeremiah, because in the Dead Sea Scrolls there's 6 copies of the book of Jeremiah, and what's really interesting is that some of them align with the so-called Masoretic text, but not all of them. Some of them align with the Septuagint, and this is really significant because within the Bible, the Greek version, the so-called Septuagint version of Jeremiah, is very different, like dramatically different from the Hebrew Masoretic text. And what I have pictured here on the screen is a copy of one of these manuscripts of Jeremiah, and this is all we have from it, but there's elements that I can see when I look at this fragment which communicate some important things to me. So this is Jeremiah chapter 44. And in the Old Greek, it's commonly accepted that the old version of Jeremiah that the Septuagint was translated from ended with Jeremiah chapter 44 and Jeremiah chapter 45. And then there was some the narrative stuff was kind of tacked onto that. But what you have here is just a single fragment that contains text from Jeremiah chapter 44 towards the end. So the assumption then is made that chapter 45 follows very closely on the heels of this, but this really looks like it's probably the very end of the manuscript. And the reason that we know that is because the way that this manuscript has been damaged. You can see these little bits of damage pattern sort of at the top of the fragment. Scrolls are rolled up when they're deposited, and the way that scrolls deteriorate is usually from the outside layers in. Makes sense, right? Like the outside layers of a they're going to be the first to go. So and then what happens with some of those inside layers is that because they're lying next to each other in a row, like one on top of the other, there's going to be a correspondence of damage between them. And you can kind of see that here, right? That it looks like there's a repetition of physical damage from the left to the right. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very close to one another, which means that tightly it's rolled. Very tightly wound right in the center, right? So we have here an example of a fragment from the book of Jeremiah that preserves the old Septuagint version in Hebrew. And it is very cool. And it's also really important insofar as this conversation of textual criticism is concerned, insofar as our understanding of what the Septuagint is, right? So the Septuagint preserves an older form of the Hebrew text of the book of Jeremiah, but importantly, it's translating a Hebrew text. Still, just a different Hebrew text. And I mean, this is just one of those things that Amon's model has no account for, is why on earth you would have competing Hebrew text types stemming from a Greek original so close to that time in the first place too. Like it's just one of the many problems, but this is one of the very, very cool things that you see in the Dead Sea Scrolls in terms of the textual criticism of the Hebrew Bible.
And Kip, we have a super chat from Tree Clam Tan for $5. Would you like me to read it, or would you like to read it, or what?
Yeah. No, go ahead, read it.
All right, Kip. You used to respond to JJJ and DDOW videos recently, and this is the dumbest argument you have ever heard. It doesn't even have a thorn helmet with a Ghidorah. And I'll take a drink.
That's fair. JJJ is Jeremiah J. Johnston, and DDOW is Daily Dose of Wisdom.
That first name is a Marvel character name.
It is.
It's
yes,
Joe Jana.
That's true. And he is.
Go ahead.
J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, that's his cousin.
Is it right?
Yeah, that's his cousin.
Jeremiah J. Johnston. And I gotta say, when you look him up, he is possibly even more cartoonish than the actual J. Jonah Jameson comic book character, but in different ways. So and honestly, like, I'm not kidding. The Amon stuff really is the dumbest thing I think I might have ever heard. With regards to,
it's definitely up there.
Like, it's just on
it's way up there.
Yeah.
And honestly,
really,
some of his New Testament
really
stuff is at least as dumb.
That's at least.
And in some cases,
that's just a whole other level.
In some cases, it's hard to conclude that he's not just lying, because like he'll do things like flash up like lexical entries for words, but he'll carefully crop out the parts that he doesn't want you to read. And it's like, it's hard for me to imagine an honest way in which you could crop out the part of a lexical entry that shows that you don't know what you're talking about. Like,
right? That's yeah.
so yeah.
It's such a but I think so much of these things just end up being grifts, right? Amon's running a grift.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
he's got to keep
selling
it up at this point.
He's selling at least one book, and he's selling courses that you can learn Greek from
Yeah.
him, which I would not recommend
Terrifying.
doing.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
No.
There are
bad
actual
idea.
Greek courses that you can take, whether online or in person. Hell, just getting yourself a grammar and a lexicon will probably be more reliable, although it's not a very good way to learn. But yeah, Lieutenant Math Navigator for $2 says he wants pictures of the Scorpion Man. It's true. All right, so we are actually getting to the point where it's probably time to start talking about what people have coming up. So first I want to say thank you so much, you guys. This has been sort of a weird episode because, you know, we didn't have much in the way of the video to go over because I wanted to talk about Amon's take on the Dead Sea Scrolls specifically, but then I watched the video that purports to be that, and his take is just, that's fake, man.
Nah.
It's just fake.
Nah, brah.
It's Greek. Greek's the original. And I'm like, okay, that's not an argument. That's just a claim, but okay, cool. Goop23 who's been a member for 46 months at the tetrapod level says he hid the lexical entry behind his students. Yeah, that's a callback to Andrew Snelling. You know about the Andrew Snelling hiding things behind students,
I do.
right? You do?
No, please explain.
Oh, you don't? Okay,
I don't.
So Andrew Snelling, which, by the way, by closing out your screen share, you've messed up my arrangement, which is not a Dapper's a professional. That's a Kip's a professional. We'll
Damn it,
anyway.
that's a Kip. Should I put it back up?
No, it's
Do you
fine.
want me to put it back up?
Just leave it. It's fine.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I'm sorry.
So Andrew Snelling was writing this paper, well, an article really, because it wasn't published anywhere that's an actual peer-reviewed place. But he writes this article about how there's no stress fractures in this folded bit of sediment around the Grand Canyon, and how that indicates that it was unlithified before it folded, which is consistent with a young Earth interpretation of the formation of the rocks in the Grand Canyon. Okay, and to demonstrate this, he shows a picture of this folded bit of rock. And curiously, it's a low-quality picture, and there are people in it, which normally you don't put people in your picture of a geological formation, right? Because they're just going to get in the way. Well, if you look up the USGS picture of the same formation, that's the United States Geological Survey, it's basically the government agency in the United States that's in charge of keeping track of the geology of the United States because it's important for economic reasons, and also in some cases for safety reasons. So there's a whole government agency that just keeps careful track of the geology in the US. It turns out that not only do they have a very high quality picture of this exact location taken from almost the same spot, so you can just match it up one for one, but everywhere where there's a person standing in the Snelling photo is in fact a large and very prominent stress fracture. The kind that he said just didn't exist.
Dear.
Which is just an incredibly dishonest thing to do. All right, we have a few super chats, and then I'm going to ask Vishanti what she has coming up. Then I'm going to ask Kip what he has coming up. Sorry about that, Kip. I misgendered you there for a little bit. And then I'm going to tell you what I have coming up. All right, you heard it here first, everyone. Kip, non-binary. All right, Lieutenant Math Navigator for $2 says, Casey Luskin, I see no problem with this. Yeah, that is the kind of thing Casey Luskin would do. Lieutenant Math Navigator for $2 says, biggest Kippus. That is, in fact, yeah, Kip's name. And also,
I assume that's what's happening on the screen right now, then, eh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're in the place where normally the video is. Right. And then Tree Clam Tad also says, get a Strong's Concordance. I hear it's good. I still have not figured out a good reason for a Strong's Concordance.
I don't know. Like, listen, I don't think they're completely useless.
Okay.
You know, in terms of if you don't know the original language and you're trying to navigate the Bible, I mean, it serves a function in terms of being able to help you do that, right? It's a very minimal function, but I'm not going to say it's completely useless. I will say, no, you should absolutely not be using it to do any sort of like lexical work or word study or the glossary in I would say that the Hebrew glossary in the Strong's Concordance is a problem in that it just I don't like that's the part where I don't see it serves any positive function is as soon as you start to get into extending its function beyond just a resource for the English text of the Bible.
Oh.
If that's what you...
So Holly on Biblical Hop
Yeah.
reminded me of something. It's how so Holly says it's how evangelicals practice bibliomancy without a Bible, which is kind of true. But also that reminds me, Amon Hillman claims to be a necromancer.
Right.
That is a thing
yes.
that we haven't talked about. Amon Hillman was
No.
asked how it is that he finds all this stuff in the text, because it doesn't seem like something that you would just notice immediately upon reading these texts. And he agrees with that. And he said that he has a muse. And when asked to elaborate on that, he said that there is this spirit of a deceased Greek girl from the ancient past who appears before him that he can see, and that she can herself also conjure up other spirits to help him find these things in the ancient Greek texts. So when Amon Hillman says, "Oh, I just find this in the text," what he means is, apparently, he has visions of a ghost who directs him to things in the texts.
Yes, that is a thing.
And that is what we call in the biz necromancy. So while he didn't use the word necromancer, that is Amon Hillman effectively claiming to be a necromancer. And I didn't know where else to put that, and I had kind of then forgotten about it, but then Holly on Biblical Hawk reminded me, and I was like, oh yeah, we should probably mention that Amon Hillman is sort of a self-professed necromancer, which is... I don't even know what to do with that. Also, by the way, he'll talk about how his PhD thesis was in this. His PhD thesis was actually on Latin texts. So
amazing.
There's that. Yeah, if you look into it, it turns out it was all Roman Latin pharmacology texts. And also, if you ask the people who were actually on his board, who he says told him to take out the recreational drug use chapter, what they actually say is not that they took it. They wanted him to take it out because he was like just saying things about stuff the Romans would never do, because they all seem to agree that the Romans probably did take some drugs for fun, because that's a human thing to do. But that he just didn't have sufficient evidence for that chapter, like at all, and that was a pervasive problem throughout all of his work, was not actually providing evidence for his claims that were sufficient to support the claims. So yeah, it seems like everyone who knows what they're talking about, who has examined this man's work, has come away saying, yeah, this is crazy, or he just doesn't have the evidence for this. Tree Clam Tat for $2 says, I claim to be a doctor. Lying is real. It's true, lying. Lots of people claim to be a doctor who aren't, like Kent Hovind or James White. So, yeah.
Yep.
Lieutenant Math Navigator for $5 says, we got to figure out who his dealer is. He's getting some high quality drugs. So part of it, I actually don't think is just drugs. I think there might actually be some delusions that have originated with drugs, but are not now tied to the drugs. That even if he were to get completely clean, I think some of these would persist. Now, again, I'm not a psychologist. I don't actually know for sure. It just seems that way to me.
He has talked about having like episodes and experiencing visions while still a grad student, working on an archaeological dig in Israel, right? Years and years ago.
That kind of sounds like he might have some schizophrenia going on. But again, not a doctor. Can't diagnose. Yeah. These are my not terribly well-informed opinions. Petite Flower for $5 says, Latin and Greek are basically the same, right? Well, no.
Exactly the same.
They're definitely not the same. They are related. And there's a lot of cognates, and they have similar grammatical categories for a lot of different things. So, like, if you know Latin, learning Greek or vice versa is a little bit like knowing French and then wanting to learn Romanian or something, right? Like, there's not no connection, but it's not the same thing. You can't just learn one and then know the other one. So, yeah. All right, so, Vishanti, do you have anything coming up that you want people to know about?
There's a greater chance than there was this past week of me doing a sudden, unannounced Bible reading stream.
Ooh. Oh. I would tune in for that. Is that it?
Yeah, so far that's the only thing that's coming to mind.
Okay. Well, hey, subscribe to Vishanti's channel. It is linked in the description, so, All right, Kip. We are actually over time, so I need you to go fast. Just name the name of the show, what time it is, what channel it's on, and move on.
Budget Scripture Saturday tonight on my channel, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. It's fun. On Monday, I'm going to be on Joe the Kentucky Atheist's channel. I believe at 1 o'clock Eastern, which is 10 o'clock Pacific, and I'm not entirely sure what we're doing, but he has plans, and it's a little terrifying, but also exciting that I don't know. So there's that. Check that out, and then next week I'll be doing just my regular Hebrew reading on Thursday evening, and Vish and I will be back for a show on Friday afternoon. And I think that's everything.
All right, so let's see what's coming up here for me. On Tuesday, we got Matt with Maddie. Maddie did confirm with me, so that is happening. That'll be at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Then on Thursday, we've got the next episode in the Canadian Creationist Gave Me Homework series. So that will be at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Then on Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, over on Top Hats Off, we're going to be playing more Dungeons and Dragons with Chesh and Jordan and Zeralon and Metageeky and me. So, tune in for that. It's been a really fun time. Let's see. Then next week, we should be back for more Dapper Reacts, but I don't know what we're covering because it's not going to be Amon Hillman because we've already done like 3 weeks of him, and I think that's plenty. I know that Kip has enjoyed that much more than Vishanti has.
So much more.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, by the way. This was fun.
It was mostly for you. It was for your benefit, basically.
I appreciate that.
So I don't know exactly what that's going to be about, but yeah. So there's a couple things. In a bit under 15 minutes, I think in about 12 minutes, over on Debate Hub, Chesh is going to be premiering a video that is a clip from a longer stream that I believe I was on with Manya and Landon, I think, if I remember correctly. So you can check that out. Also, I'm going to be streaming a couple episodes of Star Trek Enterprise over on my Discord. If you are a member or a patron, feel free to check that out. And I will just do one last double check on the fundraiser to see if we got enough for maybe Bent to get free pizza. Nope, no change since last time. So what that means is Bent will have to starve today. That's okay. I will get a pizza for me. That's probably not true. Anyway, last thing I have to say is ICE must be abolished. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Siloof, Ben Tovind, Tapioca Weasel, Mikau Dominiak, Sammy LaFleur, Edwin M., Kenneth Swenson, John Ackerman, Sphincter of Doom, Regios, Landon Knoll, Ian Chen, Eleron Teller, Phil Rivara, David Hercules, Joshua Geese, Dan Sheedy, Pegajace, The Plastic Mouse, Gordon Love Science, Amber Athelian, Prixie Purple, Agricola Sequa, and Me, Myself, and I. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 15% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.